Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Kate.
They made her an unprecedented money offer. They believed that $1 million salary would be sufficient to quell the critics and ensure the league's survival. It was meant to mark the official arrival of the WNBA and the ink-on-paper cementation of the new era. However, Caitlin Clark and the other members of the Players Association performed the unimaginable. They declined. They were not merely hesitant. They entirely left the table. According to reports, the consequences of that rejection have now claimed the greatest victim to yet. The league administration has shockingly informed us that Commissioner Kathy Angelbert is officially finished. The rejection of this new CBA agreement was more than a negotiating ploy. The WNBA's leadership system was destroyed by a vote of no confidence. The league completely misinterpreted the revolution taking place within its own locker rooms, believing they could purchase peace with a payout. You must examine the offer that was just turned down in order to comprehend why the commissioner is allegedly packing her bags and why this particular rejection was the last straw. According to sources, the league eventually gave in and proposed a plan that would allow elite players to receive basic pay and bonuses totaling more than $1 million annually. That sounds like a huge victory to the casual fan. It's a significant improvement over the peanuts the guys received. A few years ago, the maximum compensation was approximately $200,000. It was meant to be the magic bullet that would have prevented a labor strike and saved the 2026 season, but the players, driven by the enormous influence of celebrities like Stewart and Clark Ree, left.
Why?
Because they understand that $1 million is little in comparison to the billions the league is expected to earn. You must examine the math that the players are examining. An unprecedented television rights agreement worth more than $2 billion over the next 10 years was just reached by the WNBA. That is money that transforms. That is the type of money that modifies wealth between generations. The union saw that the owners were attempting to pull a quick one when the league proposed $1 million salary cap for elite players. While the owners retained the great majority of the potential, they were attempting to lock the players into a set number. The players want more than just an increased allowance. Their desire is to have a share of the pie. They are in favor of revenue sharing. They want a cut of each ticket scanned, each jersey sold, and each commercial that airs. They rejected more than just a contract when they turned down this offer. They disapproved of Kathy Engelbert's entire business strategy, which was the foundation of her success. For Kathy Engelbert, that rejection appears to be the last straw. Her time there has been characterized by a desperate attempt to strike a balance between the WNBA's elder guard and the new era's explosion. She had been walking a tightrope for the past 2 years, and she eventually slipped off. You have to go back to the complete pandemonium of the previous season in order to comprehend why she is allegedly resigning. From beginning to end, it was a PR nightmare. It began with the travel problems, as players had to take commercial planes while charter flights were only available to a select few. Next came the prioritizing rule, which made players decide between rich international contracts and the WNBA, removing money from their pockets in an efficient manner. However, the public view was where the true harm was done. Do you recall the interview that turned things around? The one on CNBC when Engelbert was questioned about the negative aspects of the increased fan interaction, including racism, internet harassment, and player toxicity. She changed to a corporate robotic response about rivalries and marketing rather than standing up for her players, drawing a clear line in the sand, and denouncing the hate. She likened the circumstances to those of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in the 1980s. It was a catastrophe. The athletes were enraged. They experienced abandonment. They believed that the commissioner just considered their suffering as a marketing tool to increase interaction. In fact, the union released a statement calling her leadership into question at the time, but she made it through. Because the owners believed she could still deliver the financial goods, she managed to endure it. However, she has now failed to provide the financial items. Kathy Angelbert was brought in from Deloitte by the proprietors. She was a numbers person and a corporate shark. It was her responsibility to expand the company. To her credit, the league's worth has increased dramatically. A commissioner, however, has two responsibilities: manage the talent and please the owners. She was unable to establish a connection with the athletes who are the foundation of the company. If the players don't respect you, you can't manage a sports league. It was evident that Engelbert had lost everything when the players publicly humiliated the league by declining this unprecedented gift control. The proprietors came to the conclusion that the players would not sign as long as Engelbert occupied the large chair. She now represents the outdated methods of doing things. Corporate, slow, and disconnected. Reports that Engelbert has resigned are currently flooding the internet. Insiders say this wasn't a consensual decision, while the league is frantically trying to control the narrative by making ambiguous statements about continuing conversations. There are rumors that the league's owners, who make up the board of governors, are afraid of a lockout. They are aware of the risks. They are aware that their revenue will plummet in 2026 without Caitlin Clark, Angel Ree, and the stars on the floor. The WNBA's momentum is brittle. They may never receive this degree of attention again if a labor conflict causes them to miss a season or even a portion of a season. The commissioner must resign if they are the only thing preventing a signed agreement and a lockout. The corporate press is probably framing it as a mutual parting of ways. Statements expressing gratitude for her work, mentioning the league's expansion, and wishing her well will be visible. However, let's face it, this appears to be a forced departure. The timing is just too ideal. Panic began when the CBA was rejected. The leader is currently departing. A change in leadership was desired by the players either directly or indirectly. And it appears that they have finally figured it out. For the Players Association, this is a huge win. It demonstrates that they have recognized their leverage and are not hesitant to use it. They understand that the only thing that counts is the product on the court. Additionally, the office outfits would be worthless without them. This instance demonstrates how the power structure in women's basketball has totally changed. The WNBA pretended for decades that allowing women to play was a favor. There was no marketing, the travel was difficult, and the pay was poor. Although it was anticipated that players would be appreciative of the chance, the Clark impact permanently destroyed that way of thinking. Millions of new eyeballs were drawn to the league when Caitlin Clark joined. The cost of tickets skyrocketed. The arenas were sold out. Products were flying off the shelves. The players recognized they were the ones making the money when they looked around, but they continued to be treated like second-class people. Additionally, there is another significant element that probably forced Engelbert to leave. Unmatched. Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier started this new 3-on-3 league. This is more than a side gig. The WNBA's monopoly is directly threatened by it. For just a few weeks of labor, Unrivaled offers players enormous equity, six-figure compensation, and a player-first atmosphere. It provided the players with an substitute. All of a sudden, there were other games in town besides the WNBA. The stars could go play in Miami for unbeatable prices, earn their money, and overtake the WNBA if they didn't pay up. In a world where she was no longer holding the bat, Engelbert attempted to play hardball. She was unaware that the monopoly had ended. One of the reasons the owners lost faith in Engelbert was probably his inability to see the threat of communism. She appeared to undervalue the participants' capacity for planning and constructing their own infrastructure. Each player developed their own leverage. They didn't only request a larger portion. They constructed their own bakery. The WNBA was positioned in a corner. To keep their stars, they had to make the world an offer. The owners understood they needed a fresh negotiator when they offered $1 million and were still turned down. They require a trustworthy individual who is aware of the current state of athlete empowerment. Naturally, the establishment media is already attempting to misrepresent this. The athletes are accused of being avaricious or unappreciative for declining $1 million salary. Is this too much too soon? Is a question you'll read in headlines. Don't fall for it, though. This has nothing to do with greed. It has to do with math. When the league is negotiating deals worth hundreds of millions and the players are capped at a B fraction of that, it's not greed. To demand your just share. Roughly half of basketball-related earnings go to NBA players. In the past, just a small portion of that has been given to WNBA players. The players aren't requesting non-existent funds. They are requesting the money they made. During labor talks, the story of the avaricious athlete is a worn-out tactic used to incite fans against athletes. However, fans of this age are more intelligent. They observe the stadiums that are sold out. In certain cases, they see that TV ratings surpass those of the NBA. They are aware that the funds are present. The league is still attempting to pocket the revenues while the women do the job, as this deal's rejection made clear. By turning down the offer, the players stripped away the PR veneer and showed the business for what it is. Unfortunately, Kathy Engelbert served as the company's spokesperson. Since the resignation is just the beginning, let's talk about what will happen next. If Engelbert is truly out, the WNBA will have to deal with a leadership vacancy at a critical juncture in its history. They have to find a new commissioner as soon as possible. However, who would be interested in this job? The job is a nightmare. Negotiations with a union that smells blood are necessary. In the water, you have to oversee owners who are worried about their profit margins. You also have to finish it all while everyone on the earth is looking on. The following a commissioner must serve during a war. Leader A. They will need to cross what appears to be a canyon. The possibility of a lockout also exists. The 2026 season is truly in danger if a new contract isn't reached quickly. Canceling the season immediately following the greatest growth year in history would be disastrous. It would be suicide for the company. However, the players have demonstrated that they are prepared to take a chance. Their money has been saved. They now have additional sources of revenue. To get what they deserve, they are prepared to wait. A lockout is unaffordable for the owners. They have TV commitments to uphold, stadia to fill, and bills to pay. The league is the only one under pressure. This is why the owner's resignation makes strategic sense. They hit the reset button after taking Engelbert out. They can hold her accountable for the negotiations impasse. They can claim that we are starting over by bringing in a different face. It's a traditional business strategy. To keep the deal intact, sacrifice the leader. It enables them to say, "We heard you," when they return to the table with the Players Association. "We made adjustments. Let's have a conversation now." It might be their last chance to keep the 2026 season from completely collapsing. In all of this, we also need to take Caitlin Clark into account. Although she hasn't made a public demand, her silence speaks volumes about Engelbert's dismissal. The superstars are in charge in the current NBA and WNBA. A coach gets fired if LeBron James requests it. Caitlin Clark would have backed Engelbert if she had thought she was the best leader. You can infer all you need to know from the fact that the biggest star in the sport, the woman who single-handedly transformed the league's economy, is supporting the union in opposition to the commissioner's offer. Clark is more than a novice. She is a mediator of power. She simply showed off her muscle. The other players are also coming together. The motto "Bet on Women" has become profitable, and the solidarity is evident on social media. Women. They have had enough of the investment mode justification. The WNBA owners maintained for years that they were unable to pay players because they were losing money. However, the players anticipate that the excuses will end now that the money is coming in. Engelbert's greatest shortcoming was her unable to switch from survival to thriving mode. She was an excellent general in times of peace, keeping the league alive during difficult times. However, when the league flourished, she turned out to be an awful wartime general. What does this mean for us now? The WNBA is in jeopardy if the rumors are accurate and Engelbert is out. Territory. A possible lockout that might end the 2026 season is right in front of us. The players are refusing to back down after drawing a line in the sand. The commissioner may be the first to die in this conflict, but she most likely won't be the last. There are challenges to the league's overall structure. Ownership groups may decide to sell. We may witness a total reorganization of the league's operations. The upcoming weeks will be crucial. We must keep an eye on the owner's potential replacements. Will a previous player be chosen? That would be a compromise to the union. Will they choose a different business executive? That would indicate their desire to engage in combat. We must also keep an eye on the union's rhetoric. It's clear that this was a successful job if they applaud the resignation. If they remain mute, it indicates that their only concern is the money. The WNBA has outgrown its old skin, in actuality. It is a tough process of letting go of the past. Kathy Engelbert is a symbol of the past. A period when the league was in dire need of stability, sponsors, and approval. However, The league is no longer in need of validation. It demands focus. Stability is not necessary. Equity is required. The players have changed throughout time. The fans have changed throughout time. Additionally, the company has changed. The leadership was the only item that remained unchanged. The story is far from over. Watch the other leagues as we wait for the formal news conference. Watch Unrivaled. Keep an eye on the international markets. The players are demonstrating their alternatives to us. In a market it once had total control over, the WNBA is currently fighting for its own relevancy. The commissioner's departure is a sign of a far more serious illness. The league's unwillingness to acknowledge that players are partners rather than employees. You must ask yourselves if the WNBA is prepared to handle its players as partners, or will the league fail in its attempt to preserve the status quo? In real time, we are seeing history. The athletes have just started a movement that will permanently alter women's sports. The commissioner has left. The future is entirely unwritten, and the contract is dead. Keep an eye out because things will get much messier before they get better. They made her an unprecedented money offer. They offered $1 million pay in the hopes that it would be sufficient to appease the detractors and ensure the league's survival. It was meant to be the definitive arrival of the WNBA and the ink-on-paper cementation of the new era. However, Caitlin Clark and the other members of the Players Association performed the unimaginable. They declined. They were not merely hesitant. They entirely left the table. According to reports, the consequences of that rejection have now claimed the greatest victim to yet. The league administration has shockingly informed us that Commissioner Kathy Angelbert is officially finished. The rejection of this new CBA agreement